Let's get into the story then around Jude Bellingham, because there's been lots written about him over the last few years, to be fair. There's going to be tons more over the next few weeks, I'm sure. In terms of Real Madrid's interest, Guillermo, I understand that the Spanish media was full of reports about this being a done deal. It's not quite that, is it?
Yeah, not only the Spanish media, even international media, I think they report that it was almost a done deal. But what we heard from the first moment, from the very first moment, it was that it was a very difficult operation, and it wasn't so close as they said. They said, "Be prudent, try to be prudent. Don't say something that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe soon it can happen. Who knows? But we want to be prudent." I know that if you know a bit, Real Madrid is a big club, and there are a lot of sources around the club, and sometimes the big sources are very optimistic, and the sources who are on the negotiations, who control the operation, are more prudent and want to take care of that.
What does Dortmund make of this, Rafa? What are they doing, sort of sat back listening to all these reports and claims and counterclaims?
Well, they're waiting for somebody to pick the phone up and tell them, look, we want Jude. We feel that he wants to go to us. What are we talking about? Of course, there are always negotiations before the negotiations happen. There's positioning that people are saying, what would it take? What would we be able to spend? And you saw some of that, and Guillermo can talk about this, in the Spanish press, where Real Madrid are setting the scene, saying, we won't do any crazy things, we won't spend crazy money. He wants to come to us, but we're not sure we can meet Dortmund's demand. So they play this game where it's like, you might have your valuation, but our valuation is different. Can we meet? Let's see. I still think that if indeed Real Madrid have a very strong sense of intention from Bellingham that he wants to go, if they can make this happen, then Dortmund will ultimately not stand in the way and be unreasonable. I think there will be a framework in terms of the numbers where they can both feel that they've done what they needed to do, because next season things could be very different. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. I think Dortmund are quite keen to do this this year, but they will do it without feeling that they're getting robbed or taken advantage of. That's very important to them.
How similar is this situation, Raf, to Erling Haaland this time last year?
It's not really similar at all, actually, because Erling Haaland had a release clause. Something quite funny happened, which we found out later, that the release clause was actually lower than the release clause that was publicly reported. I think there was an idea that somebody might make a little bit of extra money, quoting a bit more money than was actually necessary for Dortmund to release the player. Well, I think you can draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
So no, the situation is different in that respect. Dortmund will do a deal, but they won't do a deal at all costs. They will not, as I said, being taken advantage of. They can still control the situation to a degree that was never there with Haaland. Haaland could do whatever he wanted, and all that Dortmund could do is try to force him to make a decision quite early. But this is a different scenario.
Is this different for City as well, Sam?
Yeah, seemingly they were all over Haaland. There's obviously the newsline that we've got, the kind of the view that City are putting out as well behind the scenes, that they've not made any approach to Bellingham or to Dortmund. It kind of strikes me as they know they're not getting him.
Yeah.
And it's not we didn't want him anyway kind of thing. But that normal kind of club briefing that comes out from many clubs if they don't get a big transfer target. But I mean, that's only my reading of it. We've previously reported that it was between City and Real Madrid. I think that was absolutely fair to do. And now it's kind of gone the other way. So it's not. It's obviously different because it doesn't look like City are going to get him. But in terms of the push, it being between two clubs, it's and of course it being Dortmund, it's similar. But I suppose the element of not having a release clause maybe that's a difference, because for City it was very easy. They knew what they were going to pay. Even if the amounts were different in the end, they knew they were going to have to pay a certain amount, and they just had to work on the negotiation. But working on the negotiation with the player is one thing, but then working with a club who really want a king's ransom, that is different. So yeah, there's similarities, but there's also key differences as well. But I guess the biggest difference is it doesn't look like they're going to get him, whereas they obviously did with Haaland.
Guillermo, I'm fascinated by how the messaging from Real Madrid has changed over the last few months. They used to be very cautious, saying, well, not really for us, not sure. Do you sense that everything changed the moment that Liverpool kind of officially pulled out, that Real Madrid suddenly became a lot more confident, and also the messaging has changed?
Of course. 2 months ago, Mario and me were talking to an important member of the board, and what he was trying to explain us, it was something like, it's really similar to Haaland's case. Now that you were saying, if we could compare Haaland's operation with Bellingham's, and at that moment, Mario said to me, like, listen, but don't listen a lot, because I feel like it's not the same. And now that we know that Liverpool is out of the race, what we heard is that the message from the club has completely changed. First, it was something like, it's impossible. We cannot compete with Premier League teams. Then it was something like, well, it's very, very difficult, but we can make it. And now it's, well, it's not done, but it could be done soon. So the message has been changing. I know that Kylian Mbappe's case last year has affected the policy around Real Madrid, because maybe if it wasn't because of Mbappe, they could be more open to talk about this operation, but they want to be prudent. They don't want to commit mistakes again, to make mistakes. And sometimes I feel like some journalists understand this operation as the Kylian Mbappe's, and it could be a mistake. Like you cannot take anything for granted until the deal from the three parts are done. And in this case, I really think that at the club, they say that they feel and they know that the player wants to join Real Madrid now. It's obvious, pretty obvious, but there is nothing agreed with Borussia Dortmund. Even that we know that Real Madrid CEO Jose Angel and the Borussia Dortmund CEO are good friends. Also Florentino, they have a great relationship, and the negotiation wouldn't be a huge problem. But there is an important point here that we haven't discussed a lot, is the price. Dortmund doesn't want to give Bellingham as a present, and Real Madrid also have a strong policy on signings, and they don't want to spend 150 if it's 150. They will try to push Borussia Dortmund, and there is now the negotiation. The official negotiations, as Rafa told, haven't started yet, but before these official negotiations, there are already some movements, and this is where the operation is now. And we have to be prudent, because if it's nothing agreed, we cannot say it's almost close. We are talking maybe on a gap between 20 or 30 million euros, and it's not a bargain.
What do they want, Rafa, Dortmund?
Well, 150 is the sum that they have mentioned again and again and again, but
euros,
it doesn't necessarily
million euros.
Yes, euros.
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will only sell for 150. I think they are also realistic about the market. They understand Real Madrid's policy. They understand that Real Madrid are run in recent years very, very prudently in terms of what they do and don't do. But I think the fact that he's only 19 will make this negotiation easier. Why? Because you can give him a pretty long contract, so you'll spread out the cost of the transfer fee over those years, which will make it much easier financially in terms of the accounting. But you can also, in my view, come up with a mechanism where, okay, it might only be 100 million euros now, but every year he stays, you could have very easy bonuses. Real Madrid reaching the Champions League, Real Madrid, him playing 20 games a season. And then every year, another 5 million, another 6 million, maybe another 10 million. And then suddenly you get to a number that Dortmund, as a PLC, as a company run with stocks, and they have to talk to the stock market, can sell. And also Real Madrid internally will feel, well, we didn't pay over the odds.